Mr. Math Antics is going to get us started, and he will guide you to fill in the first part of your notes.
Percentages are super important. Have you ever been in a math class and heard another student ask the teacher,
excuse me, teacher, when are we ever going to use this stuff? You know, like in real life?
Well, when it comes to percentages, the answer is 100% of the time. Well, all right, maybe not 100% of the time, but a lot. Percentages are used every day to calculate things like, well, how much sales tax you pay when you buy something, how much something costs when it's on sale, how much fiber is in your granola bar, or how much money you can make if you invested in the stock market. That's all real life stuff for sure. So you can see that it's really important to understand percentages and how we use them in math. All right then, are you ready to learn the key to understanding percentages, or percents as they're called for short? Drum roll, please. A percent is a fraction. What? That's right, a percent is a fraction. And since you already know all about fractions, learning about percents is gonna be easy. But a percent isn't just any old fraction. A percent is a special fraction that always has 100 as the bottom number. If it's a percent, then no matter what the top number is, the bottom number will be 100. In fact, because the bottom number of a percent is always 100, we don't even write it. Instead, we use this handy little symbol called a percent sign. Whenever you see this symbol after a number, it means the number is a percent. It's really a fraction with 100 on the bottom, but it's just being written in this more compact form. Like this number 15 here. It's got the percent sign after it, so we read it as 15%. And because a percent is really a fraction that always has 100 as the bottom number, we know that it means the same thing as 15 over 100. Percents make even more sense if you know what the word percent means. The prefix of the word, per, means for each or for every. You know, like if someone said only one cookie per person, and the root word, cent, is Latin for 100. That's why there's 100 cents in a dollar. So percent literally means per 100. And that's why they're shortcuts for writing fractions that have 100 as the bottom number. All right then.
Make sure you have the red part, the blue part, and the green part filled in your notes. A percent is really a fraction. It's always out of 100. And anytime we're working with powers of 10, like 10 to the first power is 10, 10 to the second power is 100, they're nice values to work with. Think about it. You have 10 fingers, you have 10 toes. 10 is a nice number to count by, to add, subtract, multiply, divide. Here's a fun way to remember, and it's kind of random, but we can convert between different forms of rational numbers, like fraction, decimal, and percent. So FDP, you can think about it like, man, I gotta free the Dr. Pepper. It's just a fun way to remember fraction, decimal, percent. Let's practice changing a fraction to a decimal. We've done this before. In the left-hand column of your notes, go ahead and draw an arrow from F to D. That means we're going from a fraction to a decimal. How do we do that? Well, a fraction is really a division problem, so we divide. Here's where your calculator is going to come in handy, so make sure you have one out. Let's practice changing some fractions into decimals. We're going to go ahead and we're going to divide the numerator by the denominator. So in your calculator, type in 11 divided by 20. You're going to get 55 hundredths. So there's the equivalent decimal. Write down the next example, 1/25. We're going to type in 1 divided by 25. It's going to give you 4 hundredths. And the last example, just to practice changing from a fraction to a decimal, type in 8 divided by 9. Now, when I do that on my calculator here, I'm going to go 8 divided by 9. This is a repeating decimal. My calculator is rounding up the last digit that it can show up to a 9, but this 8 is going to go on forever. So when we write it, we want to make sure we put the notation bar over the digit that repeats. It's been a while since we've had to do that. So changing a fraction to a decimal, we divide numerator divided by denominator. Let's look at the next part, changing a decimal to a fraction. So this time on the left-hand side, draw an arrow on the top from D going to F. How do we change a decimal to a fraction? Well, how you read it is how you're going to write it. At this time, we're not going to deal with any repeating decimals, writing them as fractions. Let's look at some examples. Write down this decimal. We have 9 hundredths. This is a base 10 decimal, so how I'm reading it is how I'm going to write it. 9 over 100. And I'm going to ask myself, can I simplify? Nope, the only factor 9 and 100 share is 1. Here's the next example. Go ahead and write it down. How do you read that decimal? I read it as 2/10. I'm going to write it as 2/10. Now look, do 2 and 10 share a factor outside of 1? Yes, I can divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2. What would I get? 1/5. So 1/5 is equivalent to the decimal 2/10. Last example, go ahead and write it down. We have 407 thousandths. Can we simplify that? No, that would be our final answer. So from decimal to fraction, again, this is review. How we read it is how we write it. And then we want to make sure we look to see if we can simplify.